Clifford stills we have from the city of Denver span about 40 years of his career. And it's a very, very wonderful, wonderful group. Still liked the idea of groups of pictures. He gave groups of pictures to the Metropolitan, to San Francisco, and to Albright Knox in his lifetime. So he loved the idea of groups of pictures, which showed his whole career here. And here you see his 40 years of his career here, starting in 1940. With this kind of hybrid, almost American modernist picture here, which is just right before this. He's doing sort of very, very elongated figures and landscapes, which we don't have one in the sale that represents that moment, but you'll see it at the Clyfford Still Museum that opens actually in the middle of November, on the 16th of November in Denver. And then the next picture is the 1947 picture. Here you can see where he's gone from painting the background white on this 1940 picture. And the palette knife was very important to him. So really, most of this is palette knife, not really brush, and you can see if you get closely to it. And then you can see here where he's actually, instead of making the whole background white, he's really very, very involved with the two differences of color, of the white of paint and the white of the canvas ground. And so you can start to see where he's actually using that void of the canvas almost as another form in the picture, and which, of course, you see then 2 years later in the magnificent picture from 1949. This picture was on the cover of his Metropolitan retrospective, and it's one of the really the best pictures in the entire estate. And then what's interesting to see is the 1976 picture at the end. You almost will never see a late painting by Still in the marketplace. He stopped showing commercially in galleries in 1951. And so you had to really work hard to get to his studio and buy a picture, especially in the later years. Became very much isolated, wanted only his works to be in museums, did not show them, did not sell them. So it'd be easier in some way, although they're extremely rare, to find a picture from the 40s and early 50s, and you almost never see a 76 picture. And there's only about 70 some odd pictures in private hands by Clyfford Still from that period, and only about 24 drawings. So they're completely rare, and this offering is really, really, really unique. I mean, the other thing interesting about Clyfford Still is talked about earlier with Tobias and his whole idea of painting is he was on the West Coast. Rothko, Barnett Newman, Pollock, de Kooning were on the East Coast. He met Rothko in the early 40s in San Francisco. And Rothko, there's a huge amount of correspondence over a 10-year period, how Rothko felt that Clyfford Still was really the mature artist making extraordinary work. When he arrived in New York, you have to remember he was 10 years older than any of the abstract expressionists already, and also had a style already, whereas everyone was leaving surrealism and moving into another area, and he really felt very close to Newman and Rothko, who had almost touched on this sort of spiritual that Clyfford Still wanted, unlike de Kooning, Pollock, and Franz Kline, who we felt were not quite at that spiritual level of a Barnett Newman or Mark Rothko.